Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another interview for the Art of Sherlock Holmes. A very special interview today. We have VESA calling us from London. Hi, VESA.
Pleasure to be here, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So this is a really special interview because it's the first one for the global edition. Those of you that have been following the interviews, we've had quite a few interviews for the first book for West Palm, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and some interviews for the USA edition, which comes out in October. But this is the global edition. And Vesa, you're originally from Finland, I understand.
Yeah, I was born and bred over there, but this is my second tour of the United Kingdom. So I lived here before I came to university and lived in Newcastle upon Tyne for 6 years, from 2000 to 2006, and then went back to Helsinki. And now 3 years ago, with my lady, we came back to London and have been enjoying the sights ever since.
Fantastic. So why don't we just jump straight into your art? Let's have a look at your first piece here. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, we're really starting with a whopper. It's called The Flower of Life, and it was done in collaboration with a Bollywood actress called Veena Malik. And it was quite a controversial project in its, I suppose, setting, because she's Pakistani and she's Muslim. So despite her global fame, her origins, it was a fairly, let's say, peculiar circumstances that she would, first of all, say yes to a project that involved her getting nude body painted. And of course, the whole idea was not to reveal any of her body parts or that sort of a thing, but to get to the vulnerable core of everything and tell this whole global story of her controversial story, which is that they tried to kill her in Pakistan over raising some controversy for kissing a guy in the Indian Big Brother show. And there's a whole massive backstory to this, and her being exiled from her country for a year and a half, and then coming to do this whole process with me in Finland. And this particular piece is essentially, you could see her at the bottom of it here, almost like Christ, and she's taking the bravest of acts, and essentially giving all the women around the world the permission to do whatever it is that is in their hearts and follow their courage to see a vision of what they can be in their lives and then go and execute. So it was a women's empowerment thing in that kind of a way. But the whole of the process was that I was listening at the time, this American philosopher called Ken Wilber, and he sort of summed up the world's religions in a way that you have what are essentially called the patriarchal religions, and you could see they're the fourth big ones, like Christianity and Islam and Hinduism and Judaism, and they're symbolically represented, all of them, in this one piece. And what they have roughly in common is that they're ascending religions, as in they think that the earth is almost like a halfway house, and the soul comes here to be in almost like a purgatory type of game situation, out of which we ascend up, or then we go down, if depending on how we act over here.
It's a really beautiful piece. Can you give me an idea of the size and scale of it?
It's 3 meters, so that would be something like 9 feet, something like that, in 10 feet, 10
Wow.
feet.
And is it mounted? Where is it today?
There's a prototype print of it, which is like 3 point something foot, that is here in London in a private residence. But the actual thing is going to be massive and built inside of a pyramid, and there's this whole thing. But the story, if you may, if you allow, continues a little bit. That at the same time as what he said is that there's the matriarchal traditions, which would be considered more the pagan ones. They have it all reversed, which is essentially that a soul has had to have done a lot of work in order to deserve a place to come here, and this is paradise. And in the matriarchal traditions, you more celebrate sexuality and fertility, and think that this is heaven already where we are. So it's these conflicting ideas that are represented in all of the symbology here, and how it's all tied up. Is that I remember that when we went to the moon, we thought that it was the most important thing about going to the moon was getting there and seeing what it's like. But it ended up being that the most important picture that we took was when we reversed the camera and we saw Earth for the first time in a photograph, and it revealed to us the beauty and magnificence and vulnerability and all of the things about the earth. And we saw ourselves as one family properly for the first time in this kind of a way. So it's almost, the round shape of it is almost like a snapshot from the moon back to ourselves in all of our mythologies of how they have something valuable to contribute to one another and how we are really in this soup together. So that's what I mean about that it might have been a little controversial that it's her who is doing this to begin with, but the whole process, these 6 art pieces that we did together, they all have something of a personal story of hers, but the main input was how do the bigger whole come together? How do these continents have something to do with mythology, and what it was a bridge building process. It was very important to me at the time, and it's ever so relevant still, because we seem to be polarizing even further now. So all of these kinds of things are where we could get to see ourselves as a one family and remember to tolerate each other, even though we don't necessarily politically or many other ways, we don't share same ground. We have to get along, or otherwise things are going to get very ugly. So that was the deepest wish that was behind this piece.
And and it's an incredibly intricate piece. How long did it take from start to finish?
2 years.
Wow. That's
But we literally changed the world, and we reached about 300 million people when we did this.
That's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Let's jump on to your next piece.
Oh, well, this one is called Birth, and I've really loved working with this whole thing because it's essentially, I have 2 platforms. So there's this Artevo platform and then Art for Crypto. Because a couple of years ago, I started making art for and about the cryptocurrency world, because essentially the people think that it's really difficult to explain what Bitcoin is. But Bitcoin is actually essentially just that for 6,000 years, kings and governments have been controlling the issuance of money. And now with the birth of Bitcoin, for the first time, where it's no longer under the control of kings and governments. So if you think that how important of a change for the West it was for the church and state to separate, essentially what we have with the birth of Bitcoin going on here is the separation of money and state. So we don't really know how important it is, what kind of ramifications it will really have, but we already know that they're really, really big and they're very important. And Bitcoin is 10 years old now, and it's going through its birth pains, essentially. So I was marrying for the first time together with my other platform, the Artevo stuff with the body painting things, as well as symbolically all the things that are going on with the other platform with Art for Crypto. So what you have at the center of it here is the symbol of birth married together with the symbol of Bitcoin. And she's almost like screaming at her own self-reflection in pain. And this is the whole thing of, if you look at our central monetary system and the destabilizing nature of our currencies all over the world, and inflation and things like that, it's the pain we often experience, and especially I'm sure many artists will relate to this, with not having the resources, or not having money, not having independence, not having control of our own fate via controlling our financial destiny, is something that Bitcoin is essentially helping many creatives to get control of. So as for me as an artist, being inspired by money in the digital form of it and the evolution of it has been very important. But as the bigger story unfolding is what will the world of tomorrow in 10, 20, 30, 50, 150 years look like, now that we've birthed this whole decentralized currency that no one can really essentially control? What will the truly free market of the Bitcoin world look like tomorrow, now that and what will it potentially mean for the I believe it's something like 39% of the world's population is unbanked. So many of those people who are now left out of the current system, what will it look like when they start to implement all of these currencies into their day-to-day lives and they get to start to participate in the global market? What will that do for the future of our world? So those kinds of things are embedded into this piece.
That's fascinating. My wife and I spend a lot of time in Nairobi, and to see the impact that M-Pesa has had as an unusual new currency for people to participate in without a bank account. So all you need is a old style USSD mobile phone to be able to exchange digital currency, and a huge proportion of the Kenyan population use that, and it's been transformational for their economy. So I agree with you that Bitcoin has the potential to completely revolutionize the way we do things. The biggest question for me is how long it's going to take. I think we hope it's going to be faster, but I think sadly I think it will take longer than we hope.
It's probably true, and that's sort of a part of this whole thing. It's obviously not there's been so many different controversial things that have happened, that there's a lot of scammers in that space, and there's a whole bunch of snake oil being sold, and it's a very tricky place, and sometimes people are very propagandistic about it, in one way or another. Or either it's that it's the best thing in the world, or then it's the worst thing in the world, and the truth is always in between. But like you say, it's the time scale. Like when the church and state separated, it took a long time before we started to see that implemented into the larger whole. But I think the birth of it and the first decade of it, and it's still going and it's still strong, was something to be celebrated in an art piece like that. And it keeps being an inspirational source for a multitude of reasons, this whole space. And it's given me a lot of opportunity as well. I get to go around the world to do these keynotes and performances and so forth. So it's and this is another one from the same world.
I was going to say, I didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to guess that this was another crypto related piece, because is that the Bitcoin symbol?
Yeah,
that I see on the bottom left.
And then it's called. It used to be Wired. And I love the title for a multitude of reasons, because what relate to this piece. So I was just like, about a year ago, there was a lot of talk about almost regulating Bitcoin out of existence in New York. At the bottom of it there, you have the New York skyline, which is made out of the Bitcoin code, or the blockchain code. And what you have from the Freedom Tower that is erected there is this wire that goes into the digital unknown. And Philippe Petit, which is not obvious at first glance in the piece, is walking on the wire here, because Philippe Petit, famously, this French guy, walked in between the Twin Towers earlier on, and he set up a wire and dangled himself in between them for a while, and had his way with the two towers. And I just thought that was symbolically the gesture that was happening, that the Bitcoin there, you can't really tell whether it's a setting sun or a rising sun. It's not a statement whether it's good or bad. It's just that we don't still know whether the beacon of freedom, New York, is going to embrace such an important new technology, or whether people who are the entrepreneurs of the space, whether they're going to have to basically walk the wire out of not only New York, but maybe the whole of the United States altogether, depending on what the regulatory bodies are going to be doing with it. So it was that whole thing. And also, the price of it is not publicly being stated, but I aim to for that to be the most expensive crypto art piece ever sold. It's a unique piece, and it comes with a digital equivalent that is verified on the blockchain with it, because that's another thing that the blockchain is helping the art world with, is that provenance is something that has been problematic for centuries, if not millennia, in the art world. And now that you have this open ledger token that you can issue with your art piece, you get to actually track the provenance of your art piece and know exactly where it's been and who's owned it, and those kinds of things. And not everybody wants that, but for those of us who want our pieces to be public and the prices to be known, then that's another tool at our disposal that helps solve some problems in the art world.
Fantastic. So you get a chain of custody, so you know exactly the provenance of a piece and where it's been. moving away a little bit, I guess, from the cryptocurrency world. This is a into your Artivo. Um,
Sure. Yeah, this was a new piece that happened from a session that was actually recorded some time ago. I believe it was 2013. The model here is called Zoe West, and she's the a daughter of a very, very famous Egyptologist called John Anthony West, who I'm proud to call my friend. Well, he passed away, but I had a chance of getting to know him a little better, and he won the Emmy for this documentary called the Mystery of the Sphinx that he made with Charlton Heston. And it's this whole thing that basically dates the Sphinx back with water erosion theories to 26,000 years or something like that. And his father essentially in many ways was a heretic in the traditional Egyptian history world, but a phenomenally inspiring man in many ways. And she's no short. She's her father's daughter and very interesting character. And they both came to Finland, and we did this body painting session with her. So she has this whole, I suppose, even a very seductive presence about her here, but the whole of the family line and their story with the Egyptology things and the Magical Egypt series that I was very, very inspired at the time when I met them and got to know the story a little bit. It inspired this more of a classical, beautiful setting, maybe something like Gustav Klimt era type of piece, but it's still the substance of it, the immortality of it is the age-old tradition of beauty in art, which I feel like we've lost a little bit to postmodernism, and it's all about ugliness and grotesque and meaninglessness and nihilism and this kind of thing, which inherently hurts my soul to see that. And what I do is not very popular in many ways, because I'm directly opposed to what is the current trend in the whole of the art world. And it's cost me personally quite a bit, because I refuse to just stick my finger up and see where the wind is blowing to make something that pleases the thing. I want to make something that lasts for a long time, to capture the essence of the human story and be a part of our immortal history, and proudly put these up there as standing for beauty, standing for what the art world used to be about, and the spiritual transcendence and inspiration. And I think those are really important. If we lose that tradition, we lose ourselves. And in that way, that is, I really do like this piece.
Yeah, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I love the colours that you've used in here as well. I like the gold and the fact that you've only got very, very small touches of additional colours in there. There's a little bit of blue, there's a little bit of red, but the majority is the gold and the gold and the cream. Very different piece, this one.
Yeah, it's a new one as well, and I suppose it ties to the previous story quite beautifully. Obviously, the story of Sisyphus is here, which I unfortunately can relate to a little too much in my own life sometimes. But it comes with a slight twist, because and it ties to the whole postmodernism thing. It's like some people try and say that we're only language, and you can. It was essentially this whole communistic idea that we are born as an empty board, and we're eternally can be conditioned to be whatever it is, that girls can be boys and back and forth and this kind of a thing. So it's called the moon to the sky because it's Sisyphus. But if you look at the angle of the what appears to be the boulder, it then turns into the moon. And he's actually trying to push the moon to the sky, so it's even a much more impossible task than what Sisyphus is doing, essentially. And it's, of course, for those of us with a little bit of common sense, it's an impossible task, even in its original form. But if you're trying to push the moon, then it's an absolutely ridiculous whole thing. So it's a little bit of a statement of how well, as a as a Western, I suppose, civilization and our traditions of how we relate to reality at the moment. And I think it was Nietzsche who famously said that no artist tolerates reality. But now, being inspired by people like Jordan Peterson and those kinds of sort of messages that are slightly more conservative, which are resonating with the youngest people as well, is how to take responsibility of your life and not talk about so much about our rights and privileges, but to talk about our responsibility, to talk about how we get to put our lives together and how to see reality as it is a little bit as well. And obviously, we need to go towards our dreams. And like, this has been a 22-year-old professional battle to be a contemporary artist and make a living out of it, and it's certainly a struggle still. So I'm no stranger to following our dreams, but they have to come with a certain dose of realism. They have to come with a certain sort of sense of having our feet planted firmly on the ground, and this is what this piece is about.
Fantastic. And let's jump on to the subject of Sherlock Holmes. As we said before, you're one of the artists appearing in the first global edition. So the first edition of The Art of Sherlock Holmes was West Palm Beach book, which is complete now, and will be coming out on the 25th of May. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. There's a USA edition coming out in October, and then the first global edition comes out in November. And yours is one of the first pieces to be completed for the global edition. And I have to say, I was absolutely blown away by this. It's a piece that I would dearly love to have on the wall of my flat, because I would be constantly brought back to it particularly with this haunting mask. What was it like to create a piece of art from a Sherlock Holmes story?
Well, first of all, it's kind of daunting because of the name of it, the gravitas of the whole of, I suppose what you could call it, the brand, is to read it, to just get the essence of it, to try and put it in a story so that it tells the story, but you only really get the meaning of the art piece after you've read the story. So it's like giving some hints towards what it is, but still, unless if you really get to immerse yourself in that wonderful text and get it, you won't get it. So it's almost like a trick ending of a movie. You have to. It's not fast food. You have to first see the piece before you read the story, and then afterwards it has a different kind of meaning. So that was what I was going after with it, and try and stay truthful to it and be. But it was inspiring. So it was fairly easy to do in terms of seeing the elements of what they're there, but to represent something that is a multitude of pages in text in one image, to get the essence, that's always the challenge. But that's what I can consider is what I really do. Like with the first piece that we talked about with the Flower of Life, is how do you take the whole of our human heritage and compress it to one image? That's essentially why I call it artevo. Because technically I use painting and photography and Photoshop and all of these combinations, sometimes body painting, but it's just storytelling. So I really love this challenge, and I'm kind of keen to do more now.
That's fantastic. Well, we absolutely. I don't want to speak for Phil, but so Phil Growick is the conceiver and curator of the project. So Phil's a two-time Sherlock Holmes novelist, and Phil came up with this amazing idea to bring two of his passions together: Sherlock Holmes writing and art. So he's very involved in the art community in West Palm, and he came up with this amazing idea to get artists to create new pieces based on the stories. And it seems that all of the artists have had a huge amount of fun doing it. It's interesting you use the word daunting, because many of the artists have said that. This is the most famous literary character of all time. It holds a Guinness World Record for the most portrayals on screen. So, you go all the way around the world and everybody knows who Sherlock Holmes is.
And of course, not, and even despite the fame, it's about genius, essentially. It's about making an art piece that even Sherlock Holmes himself, when he saw it, he would have raised eyebrows. And if you failed a Sherlock test and he'd think that it was an abysmal piece to represent something that is his genius work, what he did in the literally real world, then that would suck. So
yeah,
you have to pull your weight to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons we're obscuring part of the piece here, this isn't the whole piece, it's just the left-hand side of it, is that we are trying to keep all of the pieces a bit secret. None of the authors know which artist has been given their piece. So we're trying to keep it exciting for the authors as well, so that they know that when the book comes out, they'll be able to find out who's done their piece. Just to mention a little bit about the first book. So The Art of Sherlock Holmes, West Palm Beach, 15 artists. All the art is going to be coming together on the 9th of May. So the gallery launch will be at a premium gallery called the Anne Norton Sculpture Gardens in sunny West Palm. And that will open on the 9th of May. And we will be coming across to the gallery live on the 25th of May. So on the 25th of May, we're going to be having a really special global event. It's called the Great Sherlock Holmes Debate, and it will run on the 25th of May. And at some point during the evening, we're going to cut across to the gallery live, and it will be the first time fans will be able to see all of the art coming together. The book is now complete. As I mentioned, it's a huge. The format that we do here is to try and make the art as big as possible. So it's a large format hardback books, and that's available for pre-order now through all the major stores. Thank you so much, VESA, for coming on and doing the interview with us. It's absolutely fascinating. I wanted to just finish off maybe with a few words about the piece that's behind you, because I understand that's your latest cryptocurrency piece.
Sure, and if I may, just to extend a public thank you to Phil and his lovely wife Mayu as well to be a part of this. We've been online friends for a couple of years, I believe, at least now at this point, and we've been looking for opportunities to do something together. That was some time ago already discussed. So I'm very happy that this came together. So that's just a little nod of the hat. Over there, but yeah, this is called Stereoscopic, which is behind me, and it's 80 by 40, and it's an edition of 3, and this is the second one, and it's a little bit about abstraction, because my work often has a lot of abstract elements, but something tangible within them as well, and it's this whole idea that love and money and art and spirituality, they're abstractions, but once you have and many people believe that they're all rubbish, by the way, that it's love is not real, or money is just something or whatever. But it's like a language being spoken. And when you have the direct experience, they become real, and arguably the most important things in our lives, the most high achieving things we could potentially be a part of while we get this chance to be breathing over here. And Stereoscopic is almost like this modern art mess. It's like, unless if you are a little bit aware of the Bitcoin world and the Bitcoin logo at the center of it, and the blocks on the both sides and what they represent, it might just look like something like someone tried to copy off Pollock or something like that. But if you do see the little bit of concrete that is on the inside of that, what it reveals is the stereoscopic depth of just how important this whole world of cryptocurrencies and the innovation of the blockchain technology and what that might mean for the whole of the future of humanity. So it's a little bit, that whole thing is that it requires a direct impact, and it requires a little bit of understanding of abstract thinking and being immersed in it somehow. And then a whole new world is revealed, and this is what this piece stands for.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to meeting up with you soon.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for this.